All right, good afternoon, everybody here on the East Coast, and good morning to everybody out west. So, Jason Sherman here, now your training manager here at Cayenne and Capital Bank Card, and we are going to do an exciting webinar today about leveraging EMV. This is one of the biggest opportunities in the payments industry in quite some time. So, we're going to talk about today how to leverage the EMV liability shift to drive new business. Every swiped merchant in your market is going to need to update their equipment. How many are you going to get? Massive opportunity for you guys right now. I mean, there hasn't been a thing like this in the payments industry causing merchants to re-terminal for I can't explain how long. And this is an amazing opportunity for you to walk in and deal with a merchant whose current provider isn't doing a good job talking to them about this. So there's a ton of opportunity for you guys to really drive a whole lot of business. So we're going to jump right in. As normal, feel free to jump in, ask questions, and we will definitely do Q&A at the end. But do keep in mind the focus of today is driving new business. So we're not focusing on your existing portfolios. We've been messaging you guys about that, and we have a few more messages to give you. But today is all about driving new business. So with that in mind, let's get rolling. So first, let's talk a little bit about EMV. You guys have heard us talking about these three letters for a couple years now, and it's finally happening. So EMV is the global card technology of choice, and it's finally coming to the US. And I say finally because we are behind the rest of the world. Significantly behind. Definitely pretty wild. I have a map that I'm going to show you guys in a couple slides that really puts it in perspective. Now, an EMV card has a set of contacts on it that are usually printed in gold or silver. When the card's inserted into a payment reader, the contacts will deliver power to the card's microprocessor. So one of the cool things about EMV is it is actually bringing the power of computation to every single transaction. Pretty wild. These are ultimately going to replace mag stripes and alter payments for millions of consumers and cause business owners to upgrade equipment at the point of sale. This is your opportunity to get in and talk to these merchants. Now, one thing that I want to get right off the bat, this is only for card-present transactions or swiped transactions. This is not going to affect your keyed, Moto, or e-commerce merchants. They already have fraud protections in place, and they're going to keep operating in the same exact manner. So definitely a big one to keep in mind. Really only talk to your swiped merchants about EMV. This is where your opportunity lies. Now let's learn a little bit more about what this technology is. So EMV was developed in the UK about 10 years ago to combat the duplication of counterfeit cards, and it stands for Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. EMV has been extremely successful in rendering stolen card data useless to thieves. Very big. That is the point of EMV, is to really combat that counterfeit card data. EMV is significantly more advanced than the current technology in place, and it is the ultimate in security within the payments industry and will absolutely help to reduce fraud. Right now, the US is the global leader in card fraud, with 47% of local fraudulent transactions, even though we do only 23% of the transactions globally. Those numbers are way out of whack. What it comes down to is we are the path of least resistance for these fraudsters. If you think about it, if you're a crook and you're going to go rob a house and there's two houses on a street and one has guard dogs and an alarm and the other one has nothing going on and an open window, you're clearly going to go rob the one with the open window. It's the same thing here. We are easy pickings for these fraudsters. With EMV, that's going to change. Right now, with figures from the European Central Bank, they indicated as much as 78% of all counterfeit card fraud is carried out in countries that have yet to transition to EMV. Guess what? That's us. So it's a big thing here and a huge, monumentous effort for the entire payments ecosystem of the United States to get on board with this. But it's happening. And like I mentioned, we are significantly behind on EMV adoption. These figures were reported at the end of last year, and you can see in the US, we're grayed out, we only have 7.3% of cards and only 0.12% of transactions going through his EMV. Now that number is rising every single day with more and more cards being issued, but it is pretty wild to look at this and see we are behind everyone else in the world. So it's pretty nuts. So that is why we are experiencing so much fraud, because it's just easier for them to perform it here. Now, this is pretty wild when you think about it. I learned this recently and it really resonated with me. And I think you guys can use this to explain to a merchant how this technology is going to benefit them. Mag stripes are significantly outdated technology. That same technology on a mag stripe is the same technology as cassette tapes. Really let that set in. I haven't owned a cassette tape since I was in high school. I think most of you guys are in the same boat. This technology was developed during World War II, and it has not undergone any major advancements. Pretty wild when you really think about this and let it set in. This is the backbone of our payments infrastructure here in the US. Mag stripes are significantly easier to clone. There are 7-year-old kids with the right technology that can clone a mag stripe. And the big thing is they lack that two-way communication that EMV is incorporated to keep that payment data secure. EMV is significantly more secure. It's more than just a chip as well. With EMV, there's dynamic data unique to each single transaction. Think a one-time use password for each particular transaction. This means even if a fraudster manages to steal that card data, they're not going to be able to generate that unique one-time passcode, and that card's going to be declined. They can't duplicate an EMV chip, so they'd only be able to create mag stripes with that stolen data. Then they can only use those counterfeit mag stripe cards at merchant locations that don't have an EMV capable machine. Your merchants don't want to be in that category. And if you really think about it, the longer it takes a merchant to upgrade to an EMV machine, the more fraud they're going to experience. As more and more merchants get it, there's only going to be so many places where you can utilize that fraudulent card. So it's really big to get this point across to a merchant. The longer they wait after October, the more fraud they're ultimately going to be experiencing, or at least opening themselves up to. Now, let's talk about what this liability shift means. You guys have been hearing about this for quite some time. So in the current landscape, you have mag stripe cards and mag stripe terminals. Right now, the issuer is considered liable for fraudulent transactions. After October 1st, if you have an EMV chip card and a mag stripe terminal, the merchant will be liable for the fraudulent transactions. It's whoever is the one preventing that EMV transaction from going through. If you have an EMV chip card and an EMV chip terminal, you're all set. The issuer is still going to be liable for those fraudulent transactions. So this is a big thing for merchants to get. If they don't have an EMV capable terminal, they're going to be liable for fraudulent transactions. And just so you guys all know, we are actually taking this exact slide, massaging it a little bit, and making you a marketing slick with it. So do stay tuned. You'll have access to that. Now, let's talk about actually performing an EMV transaction, because it's a different process. If you guys have been overseas with an EMV card, you've seen it. Even if you've been to a Walmart and certain businesses in your area, more and more are getting on board and starting to do it. I was at a little taqueria in Boston a couple weeks ago, and they actually performed an EMV transaction. So at a chip-enabled terminal, you're actually going to insert your card with the chip toward the terminal facing upwards, and you're not going to remove it until prompted. This is going to be the thing that takes people a while to get. We're all used to taking our card, swiping it through the terminal, and then putting it back in our pocket. That's not the case. With EMV, that card remains in the terminal for the entire transaction. Now, depending on the card, and we're going to get into the different customer verification methods, sometimes you'll provide a signature, sometimes you'll provide a PIN. It's all going to be prompted by the terminal and decided by whoever issues you that credit card. Some transactions are not going to require either. Just like in certain scenarios today, if you're in a grocery store and you spend $10, it's not asking you for a signature. That's all going to be built into the profile of your card, which we'll also touch on. From there, when the terminal says the transaction is complete, then you can go ahead and remove your card. So very different process here. Now, we mentioned verification methods. So there's a bunch of different ones that can be used for an EMV transaction for both credit and debit cards. And again, this is determined by the issuer. So right now, the one that people hear the most frequently is chip and PIN. So this is where a cardholder will have a unique 4-digit PIN that they'll enter to complete the transaction. Think PIN debit. It functions essentially the same way, except it's reading the chip as opposed to a mag stripe, but you are entering a 4-digit PIN to verify the cardholder. Now, what we have seen as the most popular early on in the United States is chip and signature. The cardholder would still insert the card, but would only be required to sign. Again, this is probably going to be the most popular early on. I have an EMV card from B of A and Chase. I have used them both on EMV transactions. I do not have a PIN. Those are chip and signature. That is the bulk of what's being issued right now, are those chip and signature cards. Still a much more secure transaction than magstripe, but it is lacking that PIN to authenticate the user. Now, another way that you can transmit EMV data is by contactless or NFC. EMV transactions can be performed with a contactless device that would transmit the payment information via NFC, like a smartphone, contactless card, or fob. Right now, Apple Pay and Android Pay, they are able to transmit the EMV spec for the actual card data contactless. So if you're using Apple Pay and you have an EMV card loaded into there and it's hitting a terminal that's capable, it is transmitting full EMV payment data. And finally, the last one is no customer verification method whatsoever, like I mentioned. If you're in that grocery store and you do that transaction under $50, it's not going to have you sign, it's not going to have you enter a PIN, it's all set. So again, there's different ways to actually do the transaction, and again, it is decided by the issuer of that credit card, the Bank of America, the Chase, the Wells Fargo, whomever. Now, this I thought was very interesting. Your EMV card has a profile that the issuing bank created for you as an individual. This gives the card issuing bank much more control of what the card's actually able to do. For example, they can shut that card off automatically if they choose, and the first time it powers up, it's going to know and immediately decline moving forward. They can also set up an offline balance where the customer can make purchases up to a certain amount without the terminal communicating to the processor to verify. So they could set you up for a store and forward scenario where you could make up to $500 in purchases before it actually has to communicate out to the processor and reset that. Again, all built into your profile. And they can set it up to require no customer verification under a certain amount. I mentioned $50 for the grocery example, but it's up to the issuer. If they see that I frequently make $150 transactions at a particular business, they could set it up if they wanted to, so I didn't have to enter a signature or PIN on a transaction under $200, whatever amount they like. Very interesting. Now this is also interesting. This is actually a shot of the information sent on an EMV transaction. This is about 10% of that data, significantly more than what's coming through on a magstripe, and it's pretty interesting. Like I said, there is a profile. If you can read that small print on a screen, this determines what that card is actually able to do. So you can see this card is valid for domestic cash transactions, international cash transactions, domestic goods, international goods, domestic and international services, valid at ATMs, and valid at terminals other than ATMs. If the issuer wanted to give me a card for some reason that I could only use within the United States, they can set that. Very interesting. Again, these cards and what they can do is so much more advanced because ultimately it has a computer chip on that card. Now, let's break it down. Ultimately, what does this mean to the business owners, the people you're going to be talking to? October, this year, not next month, but the one after. If a merchant is not processing on an EMV-capable device, they will be responsible for fraudulent transactions they accept, and they're not going to have any recourse. It's going to be one of those scenarios where it says, listen, you knew you had to upgrade, you didn't, this was the risk you took. Unfortunately, you're losing that transaction. Consumers are also not going to feel comfortable paying at businesses that don't accept EMV transactions. They're going to understand that this is much more secure It's been posted in the news as the deadline approaches. You're going to see it mentioned on the national news. This is a big initiative, and all the banks are behind it. Everybody is really pushing EMV because it's going to reduce fraud. And merchants who don't upgrade to EMV-capable devices are opening themselves up to increased levels of fraud because they'll be a target for those fraudulent mag-stripe cards. If they have an EMV terminal, that card's useless. Now, what do we have to sell? So right now, we are shipping these out with EMV files for the Verifone VX520. EMV capable, and it's PCI PTS version 3 certified. So this is certified for PCI 3.0. This has a dual modem, so it can do transactions over IP or dial. Sleek design and a small footprint. It is a good looking terminal, doesn't take up a lot of space. This accepts NFC as well. This is a big pitch for you guys. You can get this terminal for EMV, but the merchant also gets Apple Pay, Android Pay, any contactless cards. That's a major benefit to them. Also, faster transaction times. This is a great quick terminal, and it will pair with the Verifone 805 pin pad for customer facing. Now, this is another thing that I find interesting. You guys are going to see a resurgence in pin pads. After the Durbin Amendment, they kind of started falling off as it really wasn't as necessary to do pin debit for some merchants. Now with EMV, with consumers performing their own transactions, you're really going to want to have a customer-facing device. That's where it really comes down to. You're going to want to have this terminal or pin pad in an area where the consumer can do their own transaction when needed. You know, if you have it behind the counter and it turns out to be a chip and pin card, I'm not going to tell you my pin. What are you going to take the terminal and carry it across? It's just not the scenario that merchants are going to want to deal with. So you will definitely see a resurgence in pin pads. Now, we are giving this to you guys at cost. This terminal is only $136.40 for an EMV-capable machine. This is a huge deal. I've seen our competition charging over $300 for this exact terminal. Now, we also have a bundle for you guys. We have the Verifone VX520 along with the 805 pin pad together. So same things here, still EMV capable, still PCI 3.0 certified, still the dual modem, sleek design and small footprint, NFC, faster transaction times, but the big thing here is you get that dedicated customer-facing pin pad. So the merchant can have the terminal facing them, they can be entering the amount of the sale, they can have the pin pad facing the customer, it'll print out their receipt, all set. So this is the ideal solution. Now this is going for $265.99 for both pieces. You can absolutely sell the terminal standalone, go sell that pin pad afterwards, but big thing with this. And I already see a question that popped in, which I am going to jump on because I happen to catch it. Good timing, Tim. But the old pin pads are not going to work for EMV. They will need new pin pads. They're not going to have the slots and the technology. There might be a couple out there that could work, but definitely you're going to want to check with our tech department. But if there's not the slot that you guys see highlighted here on the front of these terminals, right there and right there, they're going to need a new machine. So 100%. All right, let's keep going. And again, we will get into more questions. I see a bunch popping in. So mobile devices. Obviously, we've got mobile merchants. They're going to need to adapt to this as well. So we will be releasing a new mobile app and EMV-capable card reader in the coming weeks. Not right now, but again, this is something we will get you guys ahead of the deadline. Solution is going to support chip and signature as well as mag stripes. And the device is going to support Android, Apple phones, and tablets. So it's going to support all your major devices. No Windows phones, no Blackberries for the dozen people that use those. This can also work for a restaurant who wants to support pay at the table. So this is a nice thing for them. Although this solution is not going to be integrated into our gateway for any reason, it is great to know that if a restaurant really wants to get a pay at the table solution going, they can purchase a few iTouches, hook them up to their Wi-Fi, grab some of these card readers, and give one to each server in the restaurant. So that is a complete option. And of course, we will message you all when this is ready. So do keep your eye on your email. We've got a lot of exciting things happening in this channel, a lot of new products that we're working to get you guys. So really keep an eye on your email. We're going to have a lot of exciting webinars coming up in the next 6 weeks and beyond. Now, let's talk about actually pitching EMV to these merchants. First off, who should you ultimately be pitching EMV to? Right now, any swipe merchant. Again, if they're keyed, moto, or e-com, this is not going to affect them. This is definitely swiped merchants. Any merchant who's in an industry that experiences a high amount of fraud, they're going to really gravitate to this as well. So especially your high ticket merchants, jewelry, electronics, furniture, golf shops, high-end boutiques, anything that I could ultimately take a fraudulent card, go purchase, and then go resell and make some money on it. Those are the people who are going to experience the highest fraud. So if you have any of these merchants in your area that you've kind of wanted to talk to and you haven't had that great pitch, this is something to really walk in the door and bring up to them and get them to understand, they're going to be the biggest target. Jewelry stores have a bullseye on them right now. And I really want to get this out and make sure you guys understand, First Data has not released files yet for restaurant, petroleum, or lodging merchants with EMV yet. So stay tuned for those. Again, we will be messaging you as they release those files. Right now, these are retail only files. So again, big thing to keep in mind. Hold off on pitching this to those merchants. Again, they're going to have those files and we'll have the solutions, of course. And just so you guys know as well, petroleum merchants that have pay at the pump, they actually get a 2-year break. They don't have to be EMV compliant until 2017. So they do get that break. If you're not an unmanned pay at the pump though, they're going to have to get on it. So as these files come out, we will absolutely be messaging you all. Now, what should you keep your eye out for when you're walking into a business? Look at their terminal. If it's old, you see a T7 Plus back there or 2085, they're not going to have an EMV slot on them. But anything you notice that doesn't have that slot, they're going to need a new machine. If they haven't bought it in the last 6 months, there's a high probability they're going to need to replace it anyway. Some of the older machines actually had these slots on them with nothing connected to them. Clearly, they're not going to work for EMV and can't be reprogrammed for it. So VX510 LEs, those had those slots. Some of the 570s that went out, those had those slots on them. They don't do EMV. So that's the big thing, that there's literally nothing connected to that slot. It's just a shell with nothing behind it. So if you notice that it's an older terminal, again, there's still a very solid chance that they're not going to be able to use that machine. And of course, look for their window stickers. Do they have all 4 card brands? This is also a great time to pitch accepting Discover and the reduced cost of accepting Amex with the OptBlue program. So again, EMV is your foot in the door and your way to get that conversation going. But keep your eye out for the traditional sales pitches of you guys. Do they have all 4 card brands? If so, why not? Amex is too expensive? Well, it's not anymore. So a lot of good things to talk to them about. Now, your merchant's going to ask you, what happens if I don't get an EMV capable machine? Well, what happens if I don't? You're still going to be able to process, but at a disadvantage. If you take a fraudulent card, you're going to lose those funds. With an EMV capable machine, this would not have been the case, as you would not have been liable for the loss. Fraudsters are now going to target you because you have the older technology. And again, if you're talking to a jewelry store, hammer this home to them. They've got the bullseye on their back. I'm going to go in, I'm going to buy some gold. I'm going to go bring that to the pawn shop if I bought that on my fraudulent card and go make a couple quick bucks. Consumers are going to look for this EMV technology, and especially in time, they're going to feel less comfortable making payments at locations that don't have it. And of course, foreign consumers are already used to paying with EMV and know it's more secure. So that's a big thing as well. You really want to get behind that and pitch the security of it and the fact that consumers are going to be looking for this as well. Now, you're going to get this. Well, I still don't want to buy a new machine. And I don't blame you. But every single merchant who swipes credit cards is in the same boat as you right now. I can put an EMV capable machine on your countertop for about $150 or whatever you choose to mark it up to. That's going to last for years to come. This is the last major technological advancement that's coming to our industry for quite some time that's really going to cause everyone to re-terminal. Most of my competitors are charging more than double for the same exact machine. All you've got to do is process your cards through me. Great way to get that conversation going. And when they say, well, I still don't want to pay up front for it. Don't forget, I can also put you on our free terminal program that will always ensure you have an EMV capable machine with overnight replacement. So great time to pitch that free terminal program. And just to remind you guys that aren't familiar, for the free terminal program, it's going to require a $79 annual fee and a 35-cent batch fee. I did the math earlier. If that merchant batches out every single day of the year, they're looking at about 57 cents a day for an EMV capable machine. We can also get them a compatible pin pad for $5 a month as well. So you're going to see a new form coming out for that, which we will also message you guys about. And finally, one of the biggest parts of this machine and being able to talk to these people is, don't forget, this machine accepts NFC as well. Not only are you going to be able to accept EMV cards, but you'll also be able to accept payments from contactless and NFC-enabled devices. This means the merchant will be able to take Apple Pay, Android Pay, and other mobile payment programs that run on NFC. And probably the biggest one with NFC, people forget their wallets all the time. I'm in that boat. I never forget my smartphone. I feel like I forgot my pants at home if I don't have my iPhone in my pocket. And I use Apple Pay. I can confidently leave my house in Boston. I can go to 2 liquor stores, 3 delis, 2 pizza places, a taqueria, and the Whole Foods, and make purchases without my wallet. Every one of those places in my neighborhood accepts some form of mobile payment that I can do from my phone. It's only natural to get your merchant set up with this. They'll thank you. Now, we have a number of marketing materials that we have for you and a number of additional marketing materials in development right now. So go on to CB headquarters, check out resources and marketing materials. You'll see EMV resources, and right below that are NFC resources. So you're going to see some information on that, and we have a whole lot more in development. Again, this is a huge opportunity for you guys. We really want to get you out and talk about that information. So that's a really big one. This, again, it's a huge opportunity. If you guys see something out there that you like that we didn't make, shoot it to your recruiter. We'll certainly take a look at it and see if we can develop that for you guys as well. But so much good information on that. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, for immediate assistance, please shoot us an email at cbsupport@cayenne.com or give us a call at 1-800-528-0884. Thank you all so much and have a great day.